So I'm going to get started right here talking about our civic team. About in 2018, we had some issues with students when they got to the poll sites on our campus, and we have a polling site actually on campus. We had quite a few students who were not eligible, who were eligible to vote, who were registered to vote, but when they went to the polls, they were unable to cast their ballot. It said they were inactive students. With this, we had about 300 students who did not vote that day. As a result, 4 Alabama A&M students sued our board of registrar and the state of Alabama. For the university, that lawsuit brought a need for the university to appoint a civic team and start some oversight as far as making sure that our students are not only registering to vote, but when they show up on election day, their names are present and they're able to cast that ballot. So we started the civic engagement team. And trying to decide who would make up that team. The president at the time decided he definitely needed an administrator to lead this. So the administrator then became our vice president of academic affairs. He had access to the students. And of course, he would be the one to take things back to the cabinet that the university as to what we were doing. That team consisted of our vice president, myself, service learning coordinator, the director of student activities. You have to have the director of student activities on board because that director will then make sure that you're a part of all of the student activities events as well. We also have 2 faculty members because we need faculty engagement and we need to make sure the word is getting out to our faculty that our students are engaged, but mostly we want our faculty involved as well. So we had to get faculty to actually talk to faculty. We had staff members doing the same thing. So we had 2 staff members, but most importantly, we had our Sga President, who was Austin, and I'll give him a chance to speak quickly in just a moment. But we had our Sga President, we had our Panhellenic Hall President, so that we can get our Greek students involved. We have our Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors, and we have a representative from Athletic Association on our team. So Austin, if you don't mind, can you talk a little bit about your role on the team and how that was helpful, considering you were the president of SGA at the time?
Yeah, it was very helpful because one of the many things about being SGA president, you have the ear of different members of the cabinet along with the university president. And so whenever Ms. Clarke or any of the civic engagement team needed anything, I would always be there, either have my team involved with it or I report to the president, hey, I think we should be doing this for our civic engagement on campus. So when Ms. Clarke needed help with events, especially with planning events that were fun and would get the students involved, she would come to me along with the director of student activities, and we would sit and we plan what would consist of fun events. We would incorporate even voter registration into our SGA events, like our Every Sunday Wednesdays, our homecoming week, our spring week, and any other activities that we had on campus that were SGA led. And of course, making sure that my SGA members were involved in voter registration for their community service that I required them to do.
Thank you, Austin. It is so important to make sure SGA is on board. They're your connection to your students on campus. Also, when you're talking about getting information out for flyers, I usually would send the flyer to Austin, who would then make sure that that flyer got out to all the students. We did not have access to all the students through that direction, but we made sure that we were in cohort with student activities, so all students were able to get flyers and anything else we needed. Student engagement and student voter turnout, they go hand in hand. If the students are involved and engaged, and of course, on election day, we've been building up to it for weeks, months. They are just as excited as we are on election day. So we're taking pictures of them. They get to do all these events and activities, and they get to show off their letters. I mean, we're just giving them everything they want. We try to make sure that we have social media feeds going, and students love the social media feeds. I mean, they love to see themselves out there on social media. So we give them that option. We just try to stand back and let them take over just a little bit, because they know what they like, and when it gets the students there, that's the important thing. We hosted on Election Day. The students wanted the band. They wanted to make a big deal out of it. They wanted everybody, the residence halls. So we asked, what do you want to do? So they wanted a parade to the polls. The president was all for it. He actually led the parade to the polls. So this was so exciting. Austin was there. So Austin, tell them a little bit about the parade to the polls and what happened when we got to the polls.
Well, when I first got to Alabama A&M my freshman year back in 2018, I remember participating because I think we were in a midterm election year at that time. So I remember seeing this as I'm going to the polls myself, and just being really awestruck because the band was there, our Sga President at the time was there, all of the people that were important to campus, they were there. And it's just a lot of fun because it gets to bring us as students together to participate in probably one of the most consequential things that we can do in college, just as regular students and citizens of the country. And so it was really exciting because we would march all the way, I think started at like the quad and then go all the way to our on-campus polling location, which is in our gym. And we would just have like a huge party. Ms. Clarke would have snacks and we'd have drinks and we would just have a good time. We of course, I love seeing the Greeks because the last time we did it, the Greeks were strolling, and we were just having a wonderful time just watching that. Of course, I'm Greek myself, so I was out there as well. Now I wasn't strolling now, but I was just having a fun time with my fellow Greeks, and we were just, showing what we do, and then just making sure that we're using our platforms to help bring all of our students and anybody that's interested even in our organizations out, and just show them that we're about service. But it was really fun for the parade, and I think it's been one of the most important things that we've done in terms of getting students to the polls.
The last major election we had, there were over 200 students walking in the parade, including the band members, and it was just a great. It was just wonderful for the campus. It was exciting, and that was our goal. Our goal was to make voting exciting. We've been talking about voting for months, so now the students were getting the opportunity to actually participate. We also made sure that once the students, before they went in, we checked their status. We made sure that they were active voters, and we made sure that they had all the information they needed before they went in, so that voting process was smooth for them. Because you have to remember, for most of our freshman students, this is the first opportunity they'll have to vote, and it's the beginning of an experience. And if that experience isn't pleasant for them, it's possible that they could lose their need or their desire to vote. So we wanted to make sure they had a pleasant experience, both outside the polls and inside the polls as well. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about with getting administration on board and making sure that your presidents and your vice presidents are involved is that our president at the time, Dr. Hugini, he was really excited about voting. And we talked and we've met and we talked about what that's going to look like on our campus. So it wasn't strange for our president on election day to start to go to every single residence hall and knock on every single door. Every single door, every stair. We didn't even take the elevators.
Including Vice President Crosby, a student.
Yes, the Vice President Crosby, Austin was there. We knocked on every single door of resident in the residence halls at Alabama A&M. And that to me was the most exciting part. Seeing that student face when he or she opened that door and Dr. Hugini was standing there and they were like, oh my God, it's the president. And he's asking them, did you vote? When are you going to vote? Put your clothes on, go on up there and vote. So that was important for our campus. It was important to our students because they needed to see that the administration, especially our president, was behind this as well. So we're excited about what's going to happen in this upcoming election. We do have a new president, and of course we're asking him to be just as eager to talk to our students and work with our students when it comes to voter registration and voter education. and voter turnout. So we plan a lot. We plan all throughout the year. This little slide here, the band, we worked with the band all year for a couple of years so that they can do something pretty cool at a football game. So that's the band saying, go vote. But the other thing that is real important is that voting for us is not just a once every couple of years. We try to instill voting every single day on our campuses. We are a campus that is trying to embrace the culture of voting. And in order for us to embrace the culture of voting, we have to make sure that this is something we're talking about every day. It's not just every other year. This is an everyday conversation. So we do voter registration all semester long, all year long, no matter what the year is. So one of the things that we implemented was our A&M Civic Weeks. We have 2 Civic Weeks a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. And the Civic Week is put together, it's organized by the civic team, but by the students on our civic team, which will include Austin, SGA, and Pamela and Call and those other students, the AGF reps. They're all deciding on what we're going to do for our Civic Weeks. Our Civic Weeks have goals. The goal is to educate our students. We want to be able to answer those questions that they have. Any negative questions, most of it is, I don't know, why I should vote. My vote doesn't count. We all know the same questions the students ask over and over again. So we try to address those issues and actually have educational and fun activities that are happening that can help our students to make the decision to go out on and register and show up at the polls. Austin, do you have anything you want to add before we go over Civic Week events?
Yeah, I would. Only thing I have to add is that the Civic Week that we've done in the past have been really successful in terms of reaching the most amount of students because usually it does incorporate, as Ms. Clarke said, the fun with the education. And it really is to just, for us as a team, to really reach the students where they are instead of, them trying to come to us. So I think we really made a good job with these Civic Weeks that we planned throughout the years of really making sure that we're reaching the students.
Thank you, Austin. So this is just a couple of the Civic Weeks that we've done, fall 22 and spring 22. It should be 23. In fall 22, we had a kickoff pep rally at the stadium with the cheerleaders and the band. Students love the band. They love the cheerleaders. So whenever we're doing something with the band, they come out. Band draws the students out. They do. So we try to utilize our band as much as possible to get our students out there. We show the screening of the documentary, The 13th, and we were able to have some pretty good discussions about race, about just privilege in itself. So that movie kind of helped us to have those conversations. And in this particular year, fall 2020, we actually collaborated with the University of Alabama, Huntsville. So we got to get different views of what race looked like and what privilege looked like. So it was some pretty good conversation. We had a National Voter Registration Day party on the quad. We always have our DJs, and whenever we do anything on the quad, we always try to partner with SGA, our Student Government Association, so that we can get the maximum of student participation. We brought in a speaker from the ACLU, Monica Ryan. She talked about voting accessibility. We had an activity, actually, Amara Reardon, who was an Andrew Goodman ambassador, did a wonderful activity discussion on gerrymandering. So we were real excited about that. We then had our last panel was mostly led by Austin and Amaya. What do you need to do now? At the end of each year, we try to ask that question to students. What can you do now? Now that you've had all this information, now that you know, what are you going to do with this information? So they usually have these panels where they talk to students about going forward in the future. And then we try to end with some type of trip or some type of event or major event. So that particular year, we took the students to visit the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. And we went also with UAH. We had the opportunity to talk to UAH faculty and A&M faculty. They both did this, after we went to the Equal Justice Initiative, they had a conversation with all the students. We all came together about how they felt about the EJI and what they actually experienced going through that museum and talking about slavery. So it was some really good conversation we had, and we gave the students an opportunity to really reflect on their future, their past, and a lot of what they had seen in that Equal Justice Initiative. In spring of 22, we had our all-in empowerment lock-in. We actually locked ourselves in a room with our students for 13 hours. It was great. Yeah, it was great. I'm gonna go with that. It was great. The students really enjoyed it. The students wanted to do it. They wanted to lock in. They wanted all things voter engagement, civic engagement, and we gave it to them, a crash course on civic engagement. We also had fun. We had a soul train line. We played music. We did all kind of events and activities. We played musical chairs. We had all kinds of things going on to keep us awake. And at midnight, we brought in lots of ice cream, and we all ate ice cream, and that was definitely necessary to give us some more energy. So we made it fun. We made it exciting for our students, and they said they want to continue to do it because it was an important lesson. It was an important lessons on civic engagement as well as voting rights. And we were able to show a couple of those civil rights movement videos and look clips from those videos and have some good conversations. And we learned that our students have different perspectives. Oh my God, totally different perspectives. And we were able to listen to a lot of those perspectives of the civil rights movement and what's happening today when it comes to racism. We had a student versus staff kickball game. We usually try to do a kickball game every year. And that's usually like when we do the kickball game, we have the clubs and organizations out, we do Greek life, and it becomes somewhat of a tournament. And we're registering people to vote. We're checking the status of our students, making sure that the ones who voted last year or in the last election are still registered to vote. That's just an Alabama issue that we have where we register students and then they go to the polls and they're no longer active. So we have to double check as often as we can to make sure our students are registered and are able to vote. We then had a march preparation party because we were planning a reenactment of the Selma March. So we had a march preparation party where the students came together and made the signs. We taught them the chants that were used in the original Selma March. We sang those chants and we watched little clips of the original Selma March to get them hyped up about the march that we were about to have. That semester, we eventually had the march and it was really great. We had quite a few students who participated, and then after the march, we had an opportunity for students to actually talk to one of the organizers of the Selma Walk here in Alabama. Later that week, we brought in a couple speakers, and at the end of that week, we took over the residence halls with voter registration. We went into all the residence halls with balloons and decorations and all things voter registration, voter education, and registered as many students as we could, knocking on doors in the residence halls. So this is just an example, 2 examples of what our Civic Weeks look like here on A&M's campus. Austin, do you want to add anything?
The only thing that I'll say is that using the residence hall especially, and I don't know I can't remember if we talked about this in the slides off the top of my head, but being in the residence halls, using RAs, using GAs, they're really important because for a lot of freshmen that come onto campus, the first person they'll meet usually is their RA, their GA. If you have on-campus apartments, their community assistant, their CA. And so really just important use of that tool, and it's really a good way to get them.
Thank you, Austin. The picture that's up there now is our picture from the Equal Justice Initiative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Brian Stevenson, but the students got to meet Brian Stevenson on that particular trip. It was really great opportunity for them. We talked a lot about Brian Stevenson and showed the movie actually in Just Cause in the book in the bus on our way to the Equal Justice Initiative. So the students would know who they would know who he was, because otherwise they were like, who is Bryan Stevenson? So when we showed the movie, then it was like, oh, that's the guy. So we had the opportunity to take some pictures and talk to Bryan Stevenson, and that was really cool. And it was a great end to our service, to our Civic Week. These are some pictures and some of the things we did for the lock-in. Lots and lots of food. We talked about political racism roundtable, police brutality. We talked about that. That was a really good conversation about police brutality. Again, students have unique perspectives, and if you don't ask them their perspectives, we won't know. So I have this whole thing about asking. I want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, because they're our future, and we need to be listening to them. So yeah, we talked about all these issues, voter suppression. We had speakers all throughout the night, how to recognize voter suppression, what to do if you encounter it. We did the privilege walk. We had somebody come in and talk to them about privilege, and how all of us have just a little bit of privilege. We had an open hour where we just talked about anything anybody else wanted to talk about. And then later that evening, we talked about how they could get involved. We did our voter registration turnout personal goals. They signed their contracts. How many students are you going to bring to the polls with the next election? Are you going to talk to your parents? Most of the people who were in that lock-in, most of them parents didn't vote. So they now have a goal to go back. Now that they understand, now that they can actually have those conversations with their parents, their roommates about voting. And so they made a promise that they were going to talk to their family members, that they were going to talk to their roommates, they were going to talk to their frat brothers and sisters about voting. And then they signed the promise cards, and we had our wrap up. But at the end, I think the best part was our students realizing how important it is for them to register, and how important it is for them to get involved, period, because they are our future. And if they don't get involved, then we're gonna run into some trouble in the next several years. Austin, you have anything else you want to comment on before we go into questions?
No, ma'am.
So does anybody who have any questions about any of the activities, or how we were able to get our administrators on board? Any questions whatsoever?